seen some momentum signals turn bearish for NASDAQ. The momentum and the trend signals continue to be bullish for the S&P 500. I'll be watching to see if momentum signals begin to flip. Here, momentum is still bullish. The trend is still bullish. Balance of power is still bullish. See momentum and the trend flip. Again, we got to take out this line right here representing the trend, take it out and drop below the 100 period moving average and stay below those levels if we're going to get a bigger sell-off. Again, I think we're likely going to move back down towards the 4,900 area here. And if we do, then you've got the possibility of a right shoulder. I told you there are no sell signals here, so I think there's still the possibility of the divergence scenario on the S&P 500. The bars reflecting the trend, remain green, but momentum signals remain bullish on the S&P here. Saw the arrow, we saw the momentum line turn back to bullish. It remains bullish. S&P turns. This is going to be the first signal, and you'll begin to see red bars. They're still green here, reflecting momentum. Again, we began to turn down over here. We began to see green bars. We began to see momentum line flip back to blue. Turned over here. It was the first to turn. Over here, it was the first to turn. So again, when we turn, this is going to go red. See that happen with NASDAQ. I think it closed out, though, turning back to blue. We'll check in a second. It did end up being positive after being negative for some of the day. Again, we could see divergences form on indicators in the daily time frame right here with momentum. We could see that happen as well if we do try to go higher with the PCE rally. Pointed out there, while we pulled back here, there were no sell signals up here at all. We had some warning signs of momentum shifting here. We had it over here. Some sell signals, clear sell signals here. Some bullish signals down over here. And we didn't have that over here. So again, we could still go upper end of the channels I've been talking about. NASDAQ did have warning signs with the peak that we recently formed. Remember over here we formed a 9-9 sell signal. So far that high has held. And then we got a lower high last Thursday. S&P moved to a higher high. But right now, again, the bullish signals trend remain, and we're flipping back to a bullish momentum signal yesterday. And then it looks like we went from red back to blue today with the momentum line. Probably something similar to this, but again, can we make new highs or not? We'll see. And you've got the possibility of divergences developing on indicators. And again, the possibility that the topping tail on NASDAQ holds. Said we may get back-to-back bearish reversal bars on how the weekly bar closes out Friday. I told you intraday, we saw the S&P previously. Momentum turned back to bullish. We saw a buy signal over here. We saw momentum signals try to turn bullish here. Back and forth a little bit here from bearish back to bullish again. We consolidated, forming a stage 1 base. We turned up, was followed by a buy signal. And again, notice the background is green, reflecting the trend. We consolidated, even though we consolidated, we broke out of the bull flag and back tested. And you can make the case for a triangle as well, by the way. Triangle. The bars are still green. So again, and momentum is still green. So if that can continue here in the intraday time frame, you can go try to challenge the high back over here. Back over here, we got sell signals, and then we began to see the weakness here in momentum and the trend here. The consolidation, the bullish consolidation gives us the bullish signals. Bullish signal here was followed by momentum flipping back to blue and the bars flipping back to green, getting back above this line right here, which represents the trend. Again, notice we bounced off of it over here and we broke it, and then it became resistance, and we kind of hop, skipped, and jumped above it and below it. Now we're above it and we're finding support at it. The shaded area, it tells us that something big, a big move up or down, is about to happen. Momentum can remain bullish here intraday, and on the daily chart we can go higher. If they both start to turn, then lower high scenario comes into play, a lower high, lower low, 60-minute chart and on the daily chart. To go higher, we've got to stay above this area right here, 54, 65, 70 area. You can do that. Momentum can remain bullish, and we can build upon this. we begin to see this tomorrow dropping below this line, 54.65 area, and starting to see weakness and selling pressure, then the risk is we come back and take out this low, and then you get a lower high and a lower low. And that's why I talked about a possible bear flag on the 60-minute chart. And I'll show you that later in this video. Bullish things happening here in the 60-minute time frame as signals remain bullish in the daily time frame. We've got a shot at going to new all-time highs. In the upper end of the channel that I've been talking about there in the 60-minute time frame, you'll see that in this video. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows us to be able to provide you this information. Follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want, but please consider helping out. I do need your help at this time. I like the charts and indicators. Please let me know that by supporting the channel today. I just put it all out there for free and just ask that you do what you can to help out rather than get sponsors and try to sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. Please consider helping out today. I thank you for that. The VIX was down today. Again, I told you a few days ago that we were a black candlestick at the 50 period, and we are likely going to try to see the S&P rally higher in all likelihood. It has rallied higher. It's not at a new high yet. Could be tomorrow with the PCE data. But we turned off that 50. In order for volatility to return on the S&P, you got to get back above the 50 period moving average on the VIX, and we turned down off of it. So far, the VIX has not moved to a new low, so there's a discrepancy. Sometimes discrepancies mark turning points. It could still move to a new low, but again, we're coming back down here. There's a lower band towards this support zone area. We'll be watching to see if with the PCE data and then that divergence here, see what happens going into next week with Powell's speech and the FOMC minutes there on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, if the S&P attempts to move to new high with the PCE data and gets a divergence on the 60-minute chart, as I've been talking about, watching the upper Bollinger Band here, again, we had a peak here closing below the band in July. We rallied back up. We got a higher high by 3 points. We moved just above it, but you didn't exceed that band. You came in just under it, and then you got the sell-off. You got a little miniature double top. We could see something very similar to that. Again, we got the close above the upper band. If we do get a bigger rally, it might be that we stall near or just under or at around that upper band to form the divergence on the 60-minute chart with the RSI. Just something to pay attention to. The upper band is coming in at the 55, 51, 52 area. Again, we may not reach it to that level. It may come in under like what we did over here, but it's just worth something paying attention to. Here on the daily chart, the 60-minute chart of the S&P 500, the Bollinger Bands have tightened up greatly, telling us a big move is coming, either down or up. Again, if we go up, we get the divergence. If we go down, we get a lower high, lower low. Broken out of the bull flag, we back tested today. If it's successful, we can continue and try to go higher and get the divergence. But the tightening of the band, something is getting ready to happen. Over here, it was this. Over here, it was this. It was the tightening of the bands in March. I said July earlier talking about this. I meant the March peak. It's the tightening of the bands that gave us that top. We went back up. We went 3 points above it. The tightening of the bands. It gave us a rally that took us slightly above that high, 3 points higher, and then that produced the reversal. Tightening of the bands could mark a peak for a divergence, just as the tightening of the bands right here gave us this peak. If we diverge, tightening of the bands could give us the next peak. If we go up to that upper channel line there on the 60-minute chart, the upper channel lines I've been talking about, which you'll see in this video. It's telling us something big is going to happen with the PCE data. It's cool. Could get a move up, complete the diversions on the RSI on the 60-minute chart. Yesterday, we saw breakout of the bull flag on the S&P 500. We got Micron Technology earnings after the bell, and the market began to sell off with futures after hours trading with SPY. Seeing futures go down sharply and recovered overnight as the market was about to open, still open lower, rebounded, and then we pull back, breakout and backtest of our bull flag. The 60-minute chart on the 15-minute chart, I'll show you that. Ended down on Micron Technology for the session by 7%. It was down more than 8%, I believe. Market shrugged it off. Again, well, Micron Technology closed down by over 7%. The market shrugged it off and closed with the positive gain. We had the Dow up just almost 0.1%, up 36 points. The S&P was up the same, almost 0.1%, up about 5 points. NASDAQ was up 0.3%. Russell, performer of the four, was up 1% for the session, and the VIX was down by 2.5% to close just below 12.25. We got the second estimate for GDP, and it came in line. The estimate at 1.4%. Tomorrow we're going to get the PCE inflation data before the market opens. It's expected to be cool. Next week on Tuesday we'll have Fed Powell's speech. Wednesday, and that's during the market session, Wednesday we will get the FOMC minutes during the market session. Again, quickly, PCE, it's expected to come in at 0, the headline, on a month-over-month, so it's supposed to come in cool. The month-over-month core is expected to come in at 0.1%. Again, both cool readings. The year-over-year headline number is supposed to come in 2.6, which is better than the 2.7 previously. The core PCE year-over-year is expected to come in at 2.6 as well. Previous reading 2.8, again also better than expected. It's supposed to be a positive report showing cooler inflation. We could see the market rally and complete our diversions with our breakout yesterday on the flag. We back tested it today, got a successful back test. Could see new highs. Got the diversions on the 60-minute chart moving into the upper end of the channel. Let's take a look quickly before I leave here. Again, next week, July 2nd, we will be getting Fed Chair Powell's speech there during the market session. And then have a short trading week with the Independence Day holiday. We'll have the jobs report on Friday. Next week, after we get the PCE data tomorrow, the Fed's favorite gauge of inflation. The S&P was up just under 5 points. We had the breakout yesterday. Futures sold off night deeper than what the lows were of the session here. Actually went back with futures to test the previous lows back over here. The S&P, about yesterday, could just get a back test. We had the breakout, a topping tail, the 5 and 15-minute chart with that breakout, and we ended up back testing here, tried to rebound and did another test. But we have this bull flag at horizontal support, and I told you again, there's a very good chance that we exceed this level and go up and hit the upper channel line and form diversions on the RSI. The MACD firm up here in the 60-minute time frame at the center line. We dipped into negative territory briefly, dipped below the 50 period briefly, but then firmed up and consolidated around the 50 and eventually broke out of a bull flag, with the consolidation being in the lower end of the flag formation. I've talked about these channel lines. Again, I've drawn the red one, from this low and this low. If you connect, if you draw a parallel boundary from this high, again, it's pointing to up here. That's the red boundary there. Blue, we have the trend line from the low here and the low here, and I've drawn a parallel boundary, and that really connects this peak and this peak. So if we do go higher, that blue trend line could come into play. Again, either trend line could come into play, but the blue one is first. Go to a new high, that is likely where we are headed up here. Try to see the diversions complete here. That happens. We'll be watching to see if we get a big rally with the PCE. If it does come in cool, if it comes in hot, then again, the possibility, listen carefully, there's still the possibility of a lower high and a lower low if we start selling off, taking out this level. Did you hear what I just said? If we miss the mark and we get a hotter report, which it's likely not going to be that way, because again, the last CPI report came in cool. PCI will likely be cool. I think it will likely take us up to this upper boundary of the blue trend line right here in all likelihood to form this divergence, and again could complete that in the daily time frame as well. I've been watching the divergences, possible divergences in play on the RSIs here in the 60-minute time frame and on the daily chart. See another divergence. We did have a divergence right here giving us this peak right here. And again, you could see this turn back up the MACD and get another reference point, get a triple divergence here on the MACD in the 60-minute time frame. We're trying to bounce off the cloud. We're bouncing off the 50-period moving average. So again, I think you've got a pretty good shot if we get cool PCE that we're going to try to rally up into this trend line. We have next week the short trading week, and oftentimes surrounding major holidays like Independence Day, we get this manipulation. So again, if we do rally, again, it's very possible we start seeing a turn back down with maybe the FOMC minutes or Powell's speech, maybe both. Watching, do we get a big rally here going into this upper channel line? My guess is we're probably going to see that happen. Talked about the bullish possibility of going up to the upper channel line and forming the divergence. During the session, as we went sideways, we did see momentum roll over. Still could turn back up, but if it starts continuing down, and again, there's still the possibility of a lower high and a lower low if this high is to hold. We'll be watching whichever way it plays out with a lower high or divergence. Again, I think that this is going to complete a reversal in the weekly time frame, whether that's going to be with a lower high, which again could possibly be a bear flag here, or a divergence where we go up regardless of how it plays out, whether a lower high or higher high. I think that we'll see a turn on those weekly charts that I've been talking about. Again, at the bull flag, it's back tested. But then with the back test, you've got a possible bear flag here. So again, we'll see if we get the lower high. Now, again, we broke out, we back tested. If we can continue and go above this peak and continue the momentum, then the bear flag can be canceled out if we start moving above the upper boundary here. But if we start breaking down and start moving back below this horizontal level here and this low, again, then you've got a potential lower high, lower low. So that's a bullish and the bearish case. Lower high scenario, the higher high scenario, which way it plays out, those remain bullish. Still think you got a pretty good shot of trying to higher high. And it could be, we've seen some momentum signals turn bearish on NASDAQ. So it could be NASDAQ makes a lower high, S&P makes a higher high. But remember, when NASDAQ peaked over here at this high right here, S&P went on and made a slightly higher high on that Thursday a week ago as NASDAQ peaked on that previous Monday. And remember, that was the short trading week with the holiday. Another one next week. See if we get the lower high scenario or the higher high scenario, but regardless of how it plays out, divergences are a ticking time bomb in the weekly time frame, and they are going to play out. It will likely produce a reversal rather than a correction. Now, here's what happened today. Again, yesterday we ended with that topping tail on the 5-minute chart getting back above the 50 and the 200 period moving average. Amounted to nothing. We went higher, formed a divergence, pulled back to the 200 for a test, rebounded. The rally failed, pulled back to the 200 for another test, rebounded. Last 5 minutes of trading went from a negative reading, slightly down a point or two, into positive territory. We're above the 200, the 50 is above the 200. That gave us the back test for our breakout of our bull flag pattern. Remember, I talked about the breakout, slight topping tail at this upper boundary of this bear flag within the bull flag. And I told you to be watching both of those because we could still come down to the lower end before trying to go higher. But again, I told you I thought this pattern was going to break out. I've been talking about it on the 60-minute chart as well. Bull flag, and again, broke out, back tested, and then we rallied, and then again testing the moving averages, the cloud, and the trend line again, and then rebounding, closing up about 5 points by the end of the session. So we'll see if this can continue. And again, we move towards that upper boundary, moving above the high from a week ago, the previous Thursday there. And if we can go higher and hit that upper channel line or one of those channels of those trend lines that I've been talking about on the 60-minute chart. Again, we saw the negative divergence give us this sell-off. We formed a bullish divergence here, and then we went into positive territory, and now we've seen a breakout of the bull flag and a back test. We're still in positive territory here. So again, we'll be watching to see if the momentum can continue to give us a higher high or if we establish a lower high. But again, I think you got a good shot if the PCE comes in cool that we can rally with it up to that upper channel line on the 60-minute chart that I've been talking about here, and go up, slam into one of these trend lines, probably the blue one here, but maybe the red. Watching both of these channels very closely. And my signals remain bullish. The divergences are going to play out in the weekly time frame. So again, I expect we're going to see my signals begin to flip momentum back to bearish and eventually to trend signals. And it could be with a divergence or confirmation of a lower high here that does it. Again, last Thursday when we had peaked, the previous Thursday here, we hold on to the 10-period moving average. We got the inverted hammer, and then we began to bounce. The inverted hammer has not yet been confirmed. It could be. Continue to try to get this traction off the 10-period. That's the red line you see right here. If we can bounce and go higher, again, you can make your way to the upper boundary. Now, again, 2-minute chart, I have the channels drawn. Here, I have a rising wedge. If we exclude the shadows right there, you got a really nice looking rising wedge connecting the peaks over here. And it could be that is right where we are headed. The same upper boundary of the channel line there on the 60-minute chart. So, again, you got a really nice looking rising wedge. I've got the head formation here, but I told you if we go higher, the head formation may not be done yet. And again, you've got the possible head and shoulders pattern. And then we could be headed down back towards the 4,900 area on the S&P 500, forming a massive head and shoulders pattern. We had one in 2022 that formed the top there. Could be setting up another one. They're very common. Again, if we do go higher, you have a potential divergence on the RSI. If we turn down here and drop and lose a 10, drop below this trend line, drop below the last minor low, you get a lower high, lower low, and you can confirm a lower high like what we did on the weekly chart at the turn in July. We had a lower high. That was a weekly time frame. This is the daily. You could still form a divergence. You don't have to form a divergence. Over here at the bottom, there was no divergence. At other turning points, August of 2022, we had a major reversal. There was no divergence. You have to get one, but you could. MACD is tipping down here, but it did not roll over today. It's still holding above the signal line. It still may drop below it and end up turning back up and forming a divergence. We'll be watching. Do we sell off with the PCE inflation data and get a lower high, or do we go up and get a divergence and then begin to try to turn and come back and break this trend line? You've got the series of bull flags here. Again, we broke out of another one, as I've talked about. Now, again, NASDAQ initially had some volatility, and after hours with Micron Technology selling off, again, it shrugged it off. We did see, again, kind of sideways move surrounding the 50-period moving average. We saw momentum roll over. Could still turn back up. Again, we have this channel right here, but we also could get a lower high and not reach this level with NASDAQ. It's possible we do, but it is still possible that we see a divergence between the S&P and NASDAQ, a larger one develop. We had a smaller one the previous week. NASDAQ peaked nearly 2 weeks ago. The previous Monday, got a lower high on Thursday. S&P moved to a higher high, and they did diverge, and we got a lower high there on NASDAQ while S&P moved higher. I'll be watching to see what happens here. Again, do we get a lower high, lower low? Do we rally with the PCE but still get a lower high, or do we get a higher high and form a divergence on the RSIs? Again, here it is on the 60-minute chart up close. Again, we've already had the breakout of our bull flag ahead of the S&P. Still the possibility of a bear flag here, just like on the S&P 500 here on the NASDAQ 60-minute chart. But you can go higher and still get a lower high, go higher, and then turn, or get a divergence, and again, moving above this level or moving just below it. So again, we'll be watching. You also have the bearish cases as if we sell off with the PCE inflation data, that you have a bear flag, that we start breaking down and start moving towards this low right here, start establishing a lower high and a lower low. So that's the bearish case, that we don't make new highs. Again, we got that topping tail in the weekly time frame last week, getting a gravestone doji. Back-to-back, if we go up and make a new high, you can get back-to-back bearish candlesticks. Candlestick to have marked a top if we can't make new highs. It's just not valid, failing to get confirmed, but the divergence still is out and gives us a reversal shortly after the topping tail here. You still have the divergence in place on the weekly chart. So close up here, again, we're kind of going sideways, drifting sideways, just like the S&P today. Again, consolidating and finding support around this 50-period moving average. CD is still positive, back in positive territory. If it rolls over, you can confirm a lower high. If we go higher, then again, you might form a divergence or a lower high at higher levels, still not exceeding the peak here. So we'll be watching NASDAQ to see if its high holds. Again, that high was the peak, the gravestone doji on the weekly chart last week. Now, again, same thing here with the RSI. Again, we had a lower high. We reached an extreme. We had a lower high. There was no divergence. Could still get one here if we go up into the upper end of the channel line. If we get a lower high, you could confirm another lower high. If we don't exceed the gravestone doji peak from the weekly bar last week, we'll be watching if we rally with the PCE or do we sell off. And again, it's supposed to be cool, so we very well could rally. NASDAQ had a bigger sell-off than the S&P, so again, I'll be watching. S&P can make new highs. NASDAQ join it. They diverge, get a larger divergence. Now, same thing here on the daily chart for the NASDAQ. Again, you can form a divergence here on the RSI, or maybe you get a confirmation of a lower high if you cannot exceed the peak that we had nearly 2 weeks ago. And we dropped below the 10-period moving average on the daily chart. We got back above it. Had a 3-day winning streak bouncing off of it. If we drop back below it, you lose it. You've got a lower high, lower low scenario in play. Or if we go a little higher and then we turn, you got the lower high, lower low. If we go higher, then again, it's possible we form the divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame and also on the 60-minute chart. Now have the MACD rolling over here on the daily chart. It's doing it. The stochastic is turning back up. So again, we'll see if we turn back up. We may see something like this where you get a confirmation of a lower high or a divergence, and the stochastic turns back up and does the same, a confirmation of a lower high or a divergence. And I say that because oftentimes at turning points, NASDAQ and S&P will diverge from one another. We had a small divergence that was 2 days apart last week. Sometimes you get these larger divergences in an overall topping process. So again, we'll be watching if S&P does make new highs, does NASDAQ. But regardless, whether we get a lower high scenario, again, we have possible bear flag patterns on the 60-minute charts, whether we get a lower high, lower low scenario or a higher high for a divergence. The weekly charts are warning that a turn is coming very soon. Will likely be a reversal. We had a negative divergence form on NVIDIA, and it peaked and it dropped a topping tail. Again, it's still possible we go higher and get a divergence here in the most recent price action here, but this is, again, the weekly chart. Also possible that we've seen NVIDIA peak. If we have, then maybe NASDAQ has peaked as well, topping tail on NASDAQ, but I'm watching these divergences in the weekly time frame. Got it down here in the stochastic with NVIDIA as well. Watching to see what happens this week. Now, we got that gravestone doji last week, but again, candlesticks are meaningless unless they get confirmation. We did move below it this week, but we have rebounded. We are positive for the week. Again, on the log scaling, I have this rising wedge pattern, and again, just connecting these levels here, excluding the shadow, and again, you kind of slammed right up into it. You've got this divergence going on here, very similar to the divergences that form these tops and bottoms. The correction here, the correction here. This one will likely produce a reversal. See how we close. Talked about the diversions on the MACD. We have it also on the Awesome Oscillator in the weekly time frame, which I've been showing you several times each week. Currently, we're up just under 0.5%, up about 88 points for the week on NASDAQ in the weekly time frame. Here in the linear scaling, again, I've drawn the lines. This one, we overthrew it, the black trend line last week, and here the red one. If I just touch it, you got still a nice looking parallel channel on the linear scaling here for the NASDAQ weekly chart. We'll be watching to see what the close looks like. Again, you can get back-to-back reversal bars even if you go higher. You got a gravestone doji last week, okay? If we rally further, but then sell off, you still might get some kind of reversal bar. Right now, we have the open here we went lower and then now we're higher. We'll be watching to see what happens. And again, if we sell off, if this sets up a lower high and we start turning back down or go higher and then turn down, again, you can still have some type of topping tail here before the week ends. We'll be watching to see what it looks like. Right now, it kind of looks like a candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top, but the week is not yet over. But again, we'll be looking to see what candlestick forms on the NASDAQ, what candlestick forms on the S&P by the end of the week. This candlestick is absolutely meaningless unless it ends up getting confirmed and a follow-through. Right now, we had it on an intraday basis pushing below it, but rebounded. Will we close below it before the week ends or on into next week? You get much further than that, then it's really a failed pattern if you don't confirm it within a week or two. A little topping tail on the S&P last week. We'll be watching to see what kind of candlestick we get this week in the weekly time frame. Talked about these divergences in the weekly time frame. Again, we're forming another one right here, right now. We'll be watching to see, did the divergence complete last week or does it try to complete here for the next few days? We'll be watching, but again, I do expect that it is going to trigger a sell-off and likely rather than a pullback, likely a major reversal as, again, we've had back over here and back over here.